And this year, we have a very, very prestigious board of speakers. So you can see them in front. And they're also authors and thought leaders of the topics that they will be talking about or speaking about tomorrow. So I am very pleased that you are all here to spend some time with us this afternoon to find out more. And I would like to ask and seek for your help so that we will be able to create a more learning-centered culture for the entire province and hopefully soon in the entire region of Asia. So we will really be able to create a more robust learning and development landscape. So ladies and gentlemen, our speakers for tomorrow, we have Mr. Paul Larsen. He is also the author of Find Your Voice. You will find more information about him. He's one of the executive coaches that is also recognized in the Forbes Coaches Council. And then we have Mr. Scott Friedman. He has 3 books under his name, yes, if I'm not mistaken. And we have Mr. Jerome Joseph. So as you can see, even with these 3 very strong people, Jerome's expertise is on branding, which I'm sure our media is very aware of and are very excited to learn about as well. So they are here with us to help us further our thrust for L&D in Cebu and in the future, Asia. Good afternoon. If we have questions, we can direct it to our speakers in front.
We let them talk about themselves.
Yes.
So we'll start off by letting each of them talk about themselves. Like what do they do and how they view the learning development profession and the industry itself.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Right. I love a microphone, but if I don't need one, I won't use one. So thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be in the Philippines, and it's an esteemed honor to be in Cebu City. My name is Paul Larsen. I'm from San Francisco, California, in the States. And I'm an executive coach and new author of Find Your Voice as a Leader. As an executive coach, I work with leaders across many industries, executives, senior leaders, especially in technology, digital technology, social media. So companies such as Twitter, Electronic Arts, are some of the organizations that I work with. And when I talk about finding your voice is discovering your values as a leader, establishing your outcomes, demonstrating your influence, exercising your courage, and creating your overall expression. So it's values, outcomes, influence, courage, and expression. That's finding your voice as a leader. That's what I love to do. I've got 30 plus years of corporate experience. I've made every mistake there is to make as a manager and leader. And I've learned from those mistakes. And those mistakes sort of build me to who I am as a coach and allow me to work with leaders and groups and teams in that capacity. So again, it's wonderful to be here. I look forward to the conference tomorrow. I am so honored to be sharing the stage with a group of esteemed speakers, our sponsors, our hosts. It is absolutely just an honor. So thank you.
Hello, I am Scott Friedman, also from the United States, Colorado, just a little bit east of California, where Paul is from. I have been a professional speaker, author type for 31 years now. Actually an author now of 5 books, but in the past 4 years, I've switched what I write about. I now write about celebration and how it impacts performance and productivity in the workplace. So my latest book, which actually will be released next month, is called A Celebration a Day, 365 Ways to a Happier, Healthier Workplace. And the book before that is Celebrate, Lessons Learned from the World's Most Admired Organizations, where we did research interviews and surveys in 35 countries to find out how organizations engage employees, how they create customer experience, and how they use celebration as a tool to create an environment of innovation and celebration, which in turn then makes for a good learning environment. So my angle on learning and development is to create an environment where people feel comfortable, allowed to be their authentic selves, and challenged to help the organization change in positive ways. So we're going to have some fun. In our research, we found that in order for celebration to be effective, to have the perfect environment for learning, you need to have inclusivity, gratitude, play, and surprise. So we're going to have a little play and a little bit of surprise tomorrow. So we weren't planning on coming. I think it would be a good idea. All right, now I'll turn it over to Jerome, and then we'll say. And I'm also very, very honored to be here. And Philippines is one of my favorite places. And all three of us are also involved in an organization called Together We Can Change the World. And we've had a chance to do some foundation work with some wonderful organizations, helping the less fortunate, and mostly with girls and women. So it's nice to be back.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jerome Joseph. I am the Chief Experience Officer of the Brand Theatre, which is part of TMG, and we are a public listed, Nasdaq public listed company in Singapore. So I am your friendly neighbor, just 3.5 hours away. Over the past 20 odd years, my passion has been in branding. Everything that I do, I think, I write has been about branding. So I wrote my first book in 2005, and the first book was called The Brand Theatre, which coincidentally ended up being the name of my branding agency. And I wrote my recent book called Internal Branding, which is about growing your brand from within. Now, I look at branding and I look at it from two perspectives. I look at it from the perspective externally, where organizations today invest a lot of money in building a brand that you can view from outside. But critically, the new book that I wrote focuses about building branding from within. And a big part of it lies in the hands of L&D, learning and development. Because today, a big responsibility for learning and development is how can we engage our employees from within? How can we align what we stand for, our values, our vision, our purpose to our employees so that they translate the message to our customers and to our stakeholders. I'm excited tomorrow to be part of this prestigious event and to share how you can use one aspect of internal branding, which is creating stories internally to develop your talent. I'm excited to share strategies and ideas behind this. I love Philippines, and I think all of us do. In my team in Singapore, I have Filipinos working in my organization, and their passion, their hospitality, even in Singapore, I can see where it comes from, right? This is really a beautiful country, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Do you have any questions from the audience? I'm sure we do. What are your questions? Yes.
What do you think the Philippines should do in terms of Cebu in particular, in terms of positioning as the hub of learning in Asia? What do we have to do more, or what are the things that we have to do in order to achieve our positioning as a hub for learning in Asia?
Is this directed to anyone in particular?
Yeah. Anyone.
Anyone. Well, I would start by saying that a framework is needed. I'm a big believer in framework, and I look at several processes I think needs to be done. Number one, I think it's having a very strong research, into the stakeholders, right? Trying to understand your market, your stakeholders, and using that as a driver to create a strong strategy to drive learning and development. I truly believe in, the people that I've met so far. I've seen so much potential. I've seen so much opportunities in this country. I truly believe the next step for learning and development is really to look at your market, understand the needs of your stakeholders, and to develop strategies that will help you enhance this in your marketplace.
One thing that I see that would be helpful in the Philippines and Cebu would be to look to pay workers a little bit more, be more competitive with other countries for what they pay their learning and development and those that are creating innovations and learning for their stakeholders. That would be one thing that would be very helpful for be competitive on a global level.
I would also add to that, in order to differentiate yourself from any other organization, whether it be in the Philippines or any other part of Asia, or for that matter the world, you have to look at sort of what differentiates you, what can you brand that is different in terms of what would attract the learning and development community here. What value can you bring? What is that passion? Now that is one thing I see throughout the Philippines, is a passion and emotional engagement. So how can you translate that into the love of learning and development? What I have found is that most people that are attracted to learning and development, that are attracted to training and development, are passionate about what they do. That doesn't hold true for all occupations, but it does hold true a lot for L&D. So how do you tap into that in terms of how do you differentiate Cebu from any other organization that then creates that hub here for that love, that heart that is Cebu, that is learning and development. And there stands, it touches on what Scott has talked about in terms of things you might be able to do from a compensation standpoint, and talks about what Jerome mentions around branding. How do you brand that differently? So you're different from all the other cities around creating that L&D hub.
Mr. Scott, you see that the Philippines in general is paying lower compared to other.
Yeah, I think that you export so much of your good talent because they can make more money elsewhere. So it would be nice to see some of your top talent staying if they were compensated and.
How do you see the trends of learning and development? What are the new trends now in learning and development, and how different would it vary based on the cultural differences, or it's basically the same?
One of the trends I see all over the world really is how do you blend generations? How do you give the same opportunities for millennials based on what the best way for them to learn, and then the same values and opportunities for the baby boomers and the generation coming after the millennials. So it's really one of the greatest trends is more personalized learning, to where you create your own through a online learning and choosing the classes that you go to, self-select what makes the most sense for your path of learning and growth. So I see that as one trend.
I agree with Scott in that perspective, because I think today we are in the age of disruption. Things are changing at a rapid pace. One of the things that Scott talked about, online learning, new technologies, new trends, new conversations, that's happening globally. And the younger generation, in fact, multiple generations have come to embrace this technology, these conversations. L&D to keep up with this, has to evolve or die. And I say it very bluntly because I think today change is on us. The world is changing, markets are changing, learning is changing. And it's so critical that we look at this disruption and instead of fearing it, we embrace it.
Yeah, I would say it's all about connection. Today's world, we have so many ways to connect. By application, by device, by so many different processes, by so many different products, but we are not connecting. We're really not connecting. And L&D is really connecting that learning to the now. Give me results, give me tried and true fashion, make it so that it is real, that is street level. The days, I would absolutely agree with what my colleagues have said. The days of the large overhead programs, the days of the large scale complexity offsites, those are has-beens. And companies that are still investing in that and are not seeing results have not actually seen the light, so to speak. So L&D has to be app-based. Like we live in an app world. So it has to be just in time, it has to be results oriented, and people want to see those results right now. Give it to me so that L&D is not a program at work, it's a program for life. I want to see the results in my life, not just work, because life and work are one and the same now. It's all integrated, as Scott and Jerome mentioned.
With the advent of technology, especially on social media, how can this affect learning and development, especially among millennials?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I work with companies that are in social media and that are iconic in social media. And what I find is there is a push to not shy away from any of that, but to embrace that technology, to embrace the speed of that, to embrace the momentum. I find, and I think Jerome mentioned this, I find L&D sometimes is too slow and not progressive enough in terms of the field. I've been in the field for 30 plus years, and I'm hearing the same things today that I heard 30 years ago. We need more of this, we need less of this, and I'm thinking, 30 years, and look at everything we have now that we can use. So embracing the technology, embracing sort of that just-in-time learning, embracing that the learning that comes from people doing what they do in the workplace, not having to go off someplace and get trained, but in the workplace. And that's where your social media, that's where your digital tech, that's where all of those things can come into play. And that's what has to happen. And it has to happen just then. It's not going off for 3 hours to a workshop or a full day all the time. It's the learning that can take place as you sit at your desk, as you sit at your work area, as you text, as you chat, as you do all the daily things virtually no matter where you are. That's what learning has to transform into. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here 30 years, well, I won't be sitting here 30 years from now probably, but somebody like me will be sitting here 30 years from now and saying the same thing that I'm saying and that my colleagues are saying.
I also believe that it's, I'm going to go back to the old question and kind of link it back to what you said. One of the trends is learning should be fun. And if you bring that fun with technology, today we talk a lot about gamification. Tomorrow in my talk, I'm going to talk a bit about gamification. And in Singapore, for example, Pokemon Go, I'm not sure whether it's popular in Philippines.
Yeah.
The idea of gamification is so powerful, and world-class organizations today are using gamification as a platform to educate and learn. I see that's a huge opportunity. Even going beyond social media is really the idea of using the new technologies that are available and interactive user experience, immersive experiences from a learning perspective.
So, how can you sustain the effectivity of this project?
Sorry?
How can you sustain the effectivity of this project?
When you say this project, you're referring to
learning?
Yeah, the learning,
The learning
event,
like
yeah.
a training
The
program?
event or
And then the training
learning and
program, I
development
mean.
as
Yeah. The training program, I mean.
Are we talking about tomorrow's program, or are we talking about L&D in general?
L&D
Yeah.
in general.
L&D in general. So I think, the big part of it is ROI, return of investment. And today, the way you measure learning and development has evolved over the years. From traditional data to more ethnographic, observational research, field-based research. So I think critically for organizations is two things. Number one, having a tracking system in place, a measurement system in place to really look at the effectiveness. Number two, looking at new ways to measure return of investment. So many exciting ways that are available, looking at new ways to measure return of investment. And that's key from an L&D perspective.
Some of the software that you see today holds those learners accountable for what it is that they're learning. So to actually have a system that measures what you're learning, and then to take the online tests, and then if you don't pass a certain score, then you have to take those tests again. So continually to be challenged for whatever that next step is, and then to be accountable not only to yourself, but to other people within your company or your team, then make sure that the learning's ongoing and then it becomes sustainable.
Yeah, there's it's surprising to me globally and also in the States how many organizations don't have what I would consider a robust way of measuring their ROI on training and development. They'll invest significant monies into programs and they'll look at it to say, well, we trained X amount of managers or we trained X amount of employees. So it's how many people sat down and were trained, or how many people virtually went online and were trained, which to my colleagues were saying is archaic and it's old. What you want to look at is behavioral change. What you want to look at are results. Are people being managed better? Are leaders actually leading in a progressive and strategic way? As a coach, I work with leaders over a 6-month or 12-month period. So I have a sustainable process I work with. And I see behavioral change in small incremental steps. It doesn't happen large scale. It's step by step by step through a series through a timeline of, as I mentioned, 6 to 12 months. That has to occur with any type of learning and development process that we go through. But to actually measure that and to actually look to say, what's the return I'm getting? It's amazing to me, companies will measure returns on so many things in their down to their cost structures and down to the nitty-gritty. How many pencils and pens and how many things are they handing out? But when it comes to training, it's almost like this big, deep hole that doesn't always get measured as much. So it's a great question on that.
Okay, do we have some more questions? So, I'm sure we will be seeing all of you tomorrow at the event. We would like to thank all of you for spending the afternoon here. You will hear more from them tomorrow when you are at the event.